Hi there, and welcome back to Chapter 5, Lecture number 28. So in the previous lecture, we added the displacement weight paint and the grass weight paint on the terrain. And in this lecture, we will add the displacement modifier on the terrain with a subdivision modifier. And we're going to import the grass particle system. All right, so let's go. We go to the Modify tab, and I want to start with the subdivision surface and a displacement modifier. And we click on New, and we call this Terrain Disp. That's easy to recognize. And we're going to open Brownmud_02. That image will fix it. And we go for a UV coordinates map. And of course, we want the mud disp, so we have the full amount of displacement on the foreground, and it will fade away the further you look. So on this area, you will have less displacement, and on this area, you have a lot. So we have also some thick areas. So there will be there's the red area, so there's more displacement, but in this area, there's almost nothing. So we can increase the viewport details, so it's getting really clumpy, but leave this to set this on 1 for now. The next thing what we're going to do is import the grass particle system. So we go for a new one. First you go to the particle system and just check if it is enabled. So let's call this, double tap it, grass, and that needs to be grass as well. And we switch to hair. All right, and we're going to advanced, and we go to render. We change the path to collection, and we select our grass set_01. There you go. We have to fix the rotation because it will be flipped, and we go for the Y coordination set. Bang! There you have it. There you have your grass. Of course, we need to define where the grass is. So we select the nature, and most of the grass will be now on the foreground, and the further you look, it will just fade away. And that's a sort of an improvement for the scene. And we can see some grass in the water as well. I'm not quite sure if I just added this area to not be a grass area. Not quite sure, but let's focus on a sort of optimization thing. Right now, you have all the grass right there, the patches of grass. And what we can do, let's disable the terrain, and we enable the grass set. Let's disable the building as well. What I like to do is we select these grass patches, and we go to the viewport display, and we make this bounce. And so it will only show this sort of a cube, and that will save a lot of performance. So there we go. And we select all of these and make them bounce. And it's a great thing if your viewport keeps fast, even if you have a lot of objects in your scene. This is one of the best improvements you can make. And there you go. A couple more to go. I tried selecting them all and make bounce, but this is per object. All right, there we are. So we deselect that one, terrain. We want terrain, and we want our building, but we don't want main props. All right, so there we have it. Left click on the terrain, the particle system. So we set the rotation. I want to change the source from jitter to random, and I want to have a randomized value of 0.1, and randomized phase 0.1 as well. And I want to go to the texture. So we have thick patches and thin areas. We do that by using a texture, and I think I call this, no, This is a gross underscore variation. And we will change this one later on, but we start with just a value. Very important, you change displacement to the right texture, and we want a Voronoi. All right. So keeping a value of 0.1, that's a very small patches everywhere, so that will be good for this amount of grass. We keep the intensity. We want to have an influence. We disable general time because we only want to have the length. So we have very thin ones, but maybe we go for a 0.8. So this is really, really thin, but it's better, much better. All right. And the color, we boost the color contrast a little bit so we can see it. Just a second for the preview. So we want 1.1 and we want 0.9. So it's smoothed out it a little bit more. All right, so we have the grass everywhere. And let's take a look to the amount of, oh yeah, there's one more thing I like to do before we go for the rendering process. And that is, let's viewport display. I want to have an amount of 10% in viewport. And now we can boost this to, let's go for 200,000. That's a lot of grass, right? But there will only be 10% of the 200,000, 20,000 particles in our viewport. So it's very hard to see, but if you go to the top view, it's really visible that the more you go to the distance, it will fade away, and you can see the thick patches, the thin patches and the thick ones. All right, right. I maybe like to change that even more. So we go to this texture, and I would like to try Voronoi 0.05. 0.05. I think it's not refreshing. No, so you have to disable it and enable it. I'm not quite sure if that's the right thing, but at least it feels like it. Yeah, it's hard to say. Well, we keep changing these values anyway. So we have 200,000 by 20,000 in the viewport. We've set the sunlight, did we? Yes. And we check the value of the sunlight. Let's go for a strength of 6. And we want to have the environments. We have sky. Let's go for 1.2, just a little bit more skylight. And we have the viewport selected. We have the building. All right, so ignore these ugly trees. These are just stand-ins. And I want to go for a preview render. So I hit F12. We'll pause the video and we'll come back when the render is done. And we'll talk about what we have in the viewport. Yeah, that's what we're going to do. Just a quick check. Yeah, we have checked the water. Yeah, I will pause it and be back in a second. Oh yeah, you hit F12 for a render. There you go. And welcome back. So we have our first preview render. Woo! So we can see the building. It's very bright in the sunlight. Not that beautiful, but the building itself looks good. And the path is very small, so I like to make this a bit bigger. But the grass looks really, really good to me. Yeah. Nice thing. So we can see grass coming through the water plane, and that's not good, so we have to remove it. So minimize this, and I want to do something with this feedback. So I turn off the displacement. No, I want to turn off the subdivision surface. That will speed up and the particle system. All right, so the first thing that I like to change, go to the weight pane, is check if you have a 0 weight, and check if you are in the nature, is make your pad a bit bigger. Something like this will definitely do a great job. Yes, great. And there as well. Fine. Go to, and I want to have no grass in the lake, so just try to get it out and a little bit away there. Good. So this is the end of this lecture. In the next one we will focus on something else, and that's making dead leaves. So we have trees in the scene. We're not going to make them yet. We want to focus on the small leaves and spread it over the grass. And when we finish that, we will focus on the trees, what is very exciting. So stay tuned, we get there. But this is the end of this lecture. Bye-bye.